city mayors, and we talked a lot about infrastructure money, we talked about community safety, we talked about housing, we talked about responding together to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. Very much looking forward to continuing to work very closely with not just the big city mayors, but municipalities and municipal leaders right across the country to respond to people's concerns.
The Prime Minister addressed the mayors of Canada's biggest cities today. They're in Ottawa to tell the government what they'd like to see in this year's federal budget. Mayors are asking for help to fund low-emission transit fleets and support for green infrastructure. Today, the feds announced $2.5 million in funding for 11 new projects in communities through the Green Municipal Fund. But will any of these emission-lowering projects matter if the government approves the $20 billion Tech Frontier Mine project? In northern Alberta, it's expected to produce over 4 million tons of carbon emissions a year. Naheed Nenshi is the mayor of Calgary. He joins me now in studio. Hi, Mayor Nenshi.
Oh, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for coming in. I actually want to start off on the tech mine.
I had no idea my entire trip to Ottawa would be talking about the tech mine, but I'm very happy to do it.
Tell me why you're surprised that it ended up being the big topic of discussion in your meeting.
You know, it wasn't so much in the meeting, but in all of the side meetings I've had with the various ministers and MPs while I've been here. This is very much a topic of conversation, and I've been happy to be able to add some color to the discussion, because sometimes it feels, this will shock you when I say this, sometimes it feels like Ottawa is kind of a bubble.
What?
I know, right?
Yeah.
And it's really important, I think, for people to understand the reality of what's happening across the country at the moment, but also the reality of the need to make difficult decisions to balance the environment and to balance energy and to balance the economy. And, you know, I keep reminding people that, look, in Alberta today, you have a place that has gone from having the lowest unemployment rate in Canada for many, many, many years to the highest in 18 months. You went from 0% vacancy in downtown Calgary to 1 in 4 buildings in downtown Calgary are empty in 18 months. This has been incredibly jarring. It's been incredibly dislocating. And yet, Alberta still is the largest net contributor to federal coffers. And so it's difficult to say, you know, Alberta is an anomaly on the environment, they don't get climate.
There's a couple things that I wanted to add before I let him go. Nenshi himself has contributed a great deal to those companies leaving Calgary, and the vacancy of those buildings in Calgary, 1 in 4, he claims. And the reason is high taxes and no work, or lesser work and lesser work. But essentially high taxes and a lot of inconvenience within the downtown core itself. I'm talking about neglect from construction sites, blocking major roads that people need to access work. So there's a very difficult use and inconvenience using Calgary city infrastructure, and also inconvenience for people that use their cars to get to work. There is no inconvenience for people that want to use a bike, but essentially we have our Canadian winter, so this guy has made it extremely inefficient for people to use their cars. So we'll just continue.
When we're taking all their money. It's like saying we never talk about the embarrassing uncle who happened to buy us this house.
It's not that black and white, though. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think.
But,
I mean, there's a system in place in which there's a reason that you're the highest net contributors right now. That's because Alberta still has, and in no way am I taking away from what's happened over the last 18 months, but it still has the highest median income.
Yes, absolutely.
And so there's a reason that amount of money
no, absolutely.
contributed. But I understand the
absolutely. But the point being, the reason the income is high is because the economy is good, even when it's bad. You know, I often say, look.
And that statement alone proves that he knows nothing about what he talks about. The economy is good, and jobs are good. I like that Vashti called him out right away, saying it's not so simple. How this guy manages to worm his way through politics is essentially lying, but lying with a very eloquent style of lying. Whether or not he has the true facts of what he talks about, that's questionable. He often doesn't use it except for maybe some slight intimidation here or there. But anyway, I don't want to interfere too much. I'll just let it continue, and then I'll comment at the end.
Our valleys are other people's peaks. But we still have well over 100,000 people dislocated, out of work, and some real challenges, even in balancing my own budget. So that takes us to tech. Look, here's a project that, on the face of it, on paper, absolutely should be approved. It's gone through the environmental assessments. It's taken 11 years, but it has ticked off every box. It is a company that, it sounds like an oxymoron, but is the greenest mining company in the world. They've committed to go net zero by 2050, but it's still 4 megatons, and we have a carbon budget. And so it's difficult for some folks to reconcile, how do we go up 4 megatons when we got to go down 70 odd megatons? But at the same time, you got to understand that the economy is a complex organism, and we've got to work on these things in a way that are thoughtful and get us to where we need to go on climate, but also have economic development today. And I was a bit surprised that in some of the conversations that I've had here in Ottawa, the nuance of the discussion doesn't appear to be there. You know, it's about, here's a strip mine that's half the size of Edmonton, and it's going to hurt the whooping cranes, and where do we go from here? And I don't want to belittle that conversation. It's an important discussion, but it also needs to be, I think, a nuanced conversation. And
Why do you think it's so binary right now?
I think the world is binary right now, and I think that we've gone to a world where it's climate or economy, where it's jobs or greenhouse gas emissions, and that's not how this country works. So fundamentally, we got to get beyond that black and white binariness. You know, I always joke, every time I'm on here, I point out that I wear purple every day because it's red and blue. And we got to get to a purple conversation here about what we want to do together, I think.
In that vein, let me ask you, because I wrote a piece over the weekend about something that the cabinet was considering, and that is essentially saying yes, but attaching a condition whereby they would like to see not just the 100 megaton cap legislated, which it is, but not implemented through regulation, but then a commitment by Alberta as a province to go net zero by 2050 and that legislated. What would your message to Premier Kenney on that be?
I'll tell you what my message to Premier Kenney has been, which is the same as my message to the federal government. Let's make a deal. Let's talk about the very real needs to get to where we need to go by 2050. Let's talk about the very real needs to not sacrifice our economic potential across the country in order to do that. Well, let's make a deal.
Let's make it clear, and I'm sorry to interrupt again. This guy has no intention of helping the private sector or jobs or job creation or the environment. All he cares about is publicity and power and how to harness a particular situation in his political favor. I say it with confidence. This guy was a snake in Calgary. We underestimated him already 3 elections running. And what he's done systematically is expand his influence and his power very effectively, to the point at which it causes mass confusion for people living in Calgary. And meanwhile, citizens that are suffering here, he's traveling abroad, not for the purpose of discussion, because there really is no discussion that a Calgary mayor needs to have with federal politicians that's anywhere near important as a discussion that, say, the Premier of Alberta has to have. You see, what I want to impress upon you, my viewers, is that Nenshi cannot even handle his affairs at home. As far as environmental and carbon emissions and whatnot, that is his weapons as a pretense to be there. He literally has no plan, no vision, nothing to benefit Calgarians in this moment. No motivation no immediate reason to help Calgarians in the situation that he's doing right here. This is simply his bid. This interview, this publicity is a bid to reach out to Trudeau at a federal level. So it's only about power. And as for his purple tie nonsense being a combination of red and blue, nothing could be more hypocritical. Everybody knows that when he came into Calgary on the Purple Revolution, it was because he catered on social network to the LGBTQ plus community. And it was to honor them. So that was an outright lie. Let me just point this out. If you were to ask Nenshi about how he would fix Calgary jobs, how would he fix the problem? He wouldn't have an answer for you. He'd have some make-work nonsense answer that would involve a lot of union jobs that don't count really because that's being paid by the taxpayer in the first place. He wouldn't talk about entrepreneurs because, as I've done in previous videos, entrepreneurs in this city are sick of him. He's actually done things to sabotage their business, to make their business extremely highly taxable, so that their profit margins and anything they can use to make their business grow will be minor, if not completely nullified. I've talked to a lot of businesses downtown, and they're deeply suffering under him. He actually rebuilt 17th Avenue Southeast, and he's created massive vacancies of business on 17th Avenue Southeast, International Avenue. To those that have visited Calgary before, who live in Calgary, they know that. That place was rife with multicultural business. And he killed them systematically with nothing more than a bus rapid transit project that took 5 or 6 years to complete and barricaded the entrances so that no cars could access the businesses. What does this guy know about businesses? I don't want to hear that the way he speaks is so, I'm happy that Vasi, it seems that she sees right through it. I applaud that.
I think that it is entirely appropriate to say, let's implement the 100 megaton cap. Now, for those who don't know what we're talking about, we're getting jargony very quickly. The previous Alberta government had put a cap on emissions from the oil sands. The current government has not rescinded the cap, but has not really come out and said, this is what we need to do. And I bet if we said, let's put a cap there, let's have that cap decline over time in a way that's rational, that makes sense, that helps industry get to that net zero number, I think there's a deal to be had.
Okay, so there he goes again. He wants to cap the oil sands. What do you think investors' confidence will be on an industry that intentionally wants to become smaller? You're not talking about growth here. You're talking about, I don't care how anybody wants to put it, okay? You put a carbon footprint cap on the oil sands. Business confidence is not going to be anywhere near it. You're going to dwell in Canada where in, say, 50 years' time, your company is going to be reduced by a significant amount, or you'll go to the U.S. where you can grow your business as much as you want and you don't have to be afraid of carbon footprint or carbon reduction or so on and so forth. I mean, it's nice to say in the wording that he used, we'll protect the environment for such and such pretense. But if you really care about business, which it's not polarized in a sense. It's not. There are so many people that are angry with people like this guy because they put him out of work. He put them out of work, essentially. Industry in Calgary is dying solely because of this mayor, and more to blame on Trudeau and Rachel Notley, but mostly Trudeau. This guy, he put in the extra hardship that brought people to their knees, some of them, and businesses to their knees when it came to taxation. The merciless guy. That's why I call him a snake, because he's so cunning, so crafty, and the serpent tongue, really, he manipulates you with everything he says.
Is your sense after your conversations that if that kind of willingness on the part of the province was shown, there could be a positive reception?
So former Minister Amarjeet Sohi also wrote an op-ed on the weekend, and look, that's the deal. The deal that he's highlighted is the deal. The practicalities of the deal are not that complicated, and I think they make sense. And I think that there's something that most citizens of Canada could accept. But sometimes, what's the name of this show? Power and Politics, not Policy and Governance? Sometimes...
Depends on the night. Yeah.
Sometimes the politics gets in the way. And so, yes, is there a practical deal that makes sense for Canada? Absolutely. It's not complicated. It's easy to get to. Can that deal make it through the political process, I think, is the hard question.
And what is your sense of the answer after your few days here?
It's going to be harder than I thought, but we elect smart people in every order of government, and we elect people who have the best interest of the country at heart, and I think we can get there.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there.
So there you go. Everything about the speech, it carefully put together. I know it doesn't look like it. I know it sounds like almost a conspiracy, but I cannot tell you how much we hate this mayor in Calgary. The fact that he could be reelected is baffling to me. But there are several discrepancies with the voting stations and at least 3 ridings, to which I understand is illegal for them to actually open. There was a shortage of ballot, that was the discrepancy. If there's a shortage of ballots, they cannot open, I think, legally. So there's something odd. As I said, this guy is very clever in consolidating his power, his influence, and infrastructure to serve him very well. But I'll tell you another true thing. Politicians are using climate change and the pretense of climate change as their weapon of power. It's nothing to do anymore with protecting the environment or any noble motivation. It's only about power. How can I further my cause using this as my leverage point? He's not honest the way that he's talking. You know, I'm sickened by him every time I hear it because it's the biggest hypocrisy, and I don't know how people can't see through it. Vashi will see through it. I noticed that already. You can see here he gets a little bit sarcastic when things don't move his way or the line of questioning is out of line with how he intends the conversation to go. Similar to Trudeau, they just cut you right off at the knees. But the good thing is that Vashi, even in this conversation, Vashi is kind of holding back instead of really grilling him. So all I can say is I hope this guy is taken out by the next election because he's a joke. He's an absolute joke, and there's no one more dishonest that's ever served. He doesn't even serve that has held the post of Calgary mayor. I wouldn't even trust him to be like a low-ranking minister in sewage. It's like you can't. He's a massive spender, but also he endeavors to corrupt the beauty, the original beauty of what we built in this city and this city's history. And when he comes in, he removes everything nicely as it is. If there's something that exists with perfect function, he'll destroy it and he'll create some incompetent, wrecked machine in its place. That's the kind of guy he is. The opposite of rationality, you could say. But I look at this. His entrance into federal politics is it's not hidden from public sight if you're really looking at him properly. He had aspirations to enter federal politics, and he's using this as sort of a pretense to get access to Trudeau and so on. And you may remember a news article that came out earlier, him and Rachel Notley. I'll just quickly bring it up. That they were the two, pardon me, not Rachel Notley. Alison Redford. Here we are. That's the one. Apologies. So, Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi, former Premier Alison Redford, willing to help Trudeau bridge East and West divide. He's trying to establish himself as the potential guy in the West that can be Trudeau's ally. And perhaps one day he might run for the Liberal Party or something. Although I find it more convenient for him to run alongside the NDP, since that's whom I figure his political inclination slides toward. But, people like him, both of them, are dangerous for Canada. They are not trustworthy. They don't love Canada. They don't love the people in which they govern. Rather, it's a pretense for power, and it's nothing more than that. That's how they can keep themselves occupied. Everybody needs a hobby. So, to me, it's the fact that they could serve so long is something like to teach Canadians or to teach Canadian people the wrong way to govern, the wrong kind of leadership, the kind of thing that you would be afraid of in implementation. This situation here, this is the real threat to Canada at this time. Those two guys, like, I mean, he has serious political motivation, and I think if he ever got rejected from Calgary, he may run from like premier or some kind of member of parliament, because he feels that his power base in Calgary is very strong. This guy is guilty of interfering in federal elections. You may remember in the past, and even Stephen Harper, he was willing to cater to this guy's demands. It's no joke, this guy's influence. So he's very dangerous, I'd say that. Not to be feared, but dangerous in the sense that we should eliminate the problem by election. Get rid of him. Make sure he never runs for office again, and don't elect him on any grounds of merit. Because there is no merit to either of their contribution to Canada. Nothing. So this video is getting a little bit long now, but I apologize for the ranting. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope this case will encourage you to comment, and I promise that I will answer your comments, and I hope to get a nice conversation going on this like a forum. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.